Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Heartland Post interview. I'm Justin Phillips, and with me today is Kyle Koenen, the Policy Director at Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, and we're going to be talking about Milwaukee, MPS, and education. They found out some real interesting stuff, and we're going to hear from him right now.
Thanks for having me on, Justin. Appreciate the time to be here to talk about this important issue.
Yeah, no, we've actually known each other for quite a long time now. Kyle cut his teeth in campaign politics like I did. He worked in the state legislature for a little bit, and you've been at Will now for
like 5.5 years, I think.
Yeah,
now
awesome.
5.5, 6 years. So it's been a good run.
Yeah, and so what really prompted me to look into this is we saw about last week, 2 weeks ago, that there was some news about MPS, and it's in real rough shape. It's kind of failing. We've always kind of known this, but now there's the facts that are coming out. Where when you're spending $25,000 per pupil, and they're 3.5 grade levels below their peers, that's a shame. So, Kyle, what's going on? Tell us everything.
Yeah, it's probably good to set the stage and kind of talk about the issues they're experiencing. And we could probably talk for 2 hours about all the issues they're having. But I think if we're really focused on education, we should look at outcomes, right? And I think you pointed it out. There was a new Stanford kind of study that looked at how far school districts around the country are behind. And as you pointed out, MPS has students 3.6 grade levels behind in reading and the 3.4 grade levels behind in math. And it's getting worse, right? So over the last decade, that's gone down a grade level and a half. So it is a catastrophic failure that's going on there. When you look broader and look at like the NAEP scores, NAEP is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. They do, every state gets graded by this national report card, and then they also pick large urban districts. We're 24th out of 25 in fourth grade reading outcomes there. Only Detroit is worse than us. And on the NAEP in 2024, only 9% of students were proficient. So when you're thinking about long-term impact on the city, on the state, pumping out kids out of these schools without any real skill set to perform in the economy, it's gonna have long-term impacts on the city of Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, and you've seen other states, especially southern states, seem to really have revamped their education, and what they call it the Mississippi Miracle. They've come back, whereas I think I saw some rankings that saw Milwaukee with MPS was like 8th worst in the country. I know you said we're only worse than Detroit in certain things. So, what's really driving it? Is it poor teaching? Is it student discipline? What are those real hallmarks that are really challenging it?
It's an all of the above. I think what you see in the Mississippi Miracle was kind of the start of this. And now it's gone to what they're calling a full Southern surge. So Mississippi started it. Louisiana's gone from some of the worst scores in the country to having the most growth in the country. Tennessee, other states have kind of seen these progress leaps forward. And I think it comes down to a number of things. One, it's putting focus on curriculum that actually works. We've started that process here with focusing on phonics and moving towards the science of reading, away from, I'd say, some of the junk science when it comes to reading. But you have to have everyone bought in on it, and I'm not sure we've seen that here yet. I think DPI has dragged their feet on implementation. Some of the districts have kind of been kicking and screaming as when it comes to actually implementing these reforms. But it is also a focus on some of the basics with student discipline, ensuring classrooms are safe. You can't learn and teachers can't teach when there's chaos in the classroom. So there's been a big focus on empowering teachers in these states to take control of their classrooms. And finally, it's giving parents choices. All these states have kind of seen growth in their choice programs as well. When parents have a choice and can take their kid to another school that better fits their needs, you're going to see academic outcomes increase.
Yeah, I know progressive leftists in some of these major cities like Washington, D.C., who still embrace the school choice program, who still embrace private education because of how bad Washington, D.C. was and is. So what's stopping, the liberals in Milwaukee from embracing it? I just saw this article that said that the teachers union functions more now as a Democrat Party apparatus, and we've always kind of known that being from Wisconsin over the past 15 years. But what is stopping MPS from being more involved or being more supportive of school choice or that?
Yeah, I think it comes down to political will. And you've seen it. There's been cities that have done successful turnaround efforts. Now it's not always lasting because, as you point out, a lot of times you'll have a reformer come in, make changes, start moving the ball in the right direction. I think this happened in Denver. They were really improving things, and then a slate of union-backed candidates gets elected to the school board, and they tear it all down, right? And you see that progress recede. So I think you've seen that in other places around the country. It comes down to political will. And with this new superintendent, I think the grade's out. It's too early to give her a grade, but there's some positive things that you can point to, like just vibes wise, right? She's acknowledging they're spending too much money. She's cutting back positions and putting administrators back into the classroom. I think those are all positives. But then there's other things you see that go in the opposite direction. She went on, I think, up front talking about she supports ending Act 10. That would put the district into a financial hellscape, right? And they already are in a tough financial position. And I think the other big thing, so not to get too into the weeds, but MPS is authorized charter schools, right? That kind of operate independently of the district. Generally speaking, those district charters have outperformed the traditional public schools. And MPS is, because they're part of MPS gets to count those kids towards their academic achievement. And now they are in the process of expelling these schools from their network. So, it's going to do two things. It's going to hurt them budgetarily because MPS, as you point out, gets about $25,000 per kid. The independent charter amount in Wisconsin is about $13,000. So MPS kind of pockets the rest of that. That bolsters their budget by $40 to $50 million, which is exactly around where the budget hole is. So they're expelling schools that make them look better, and also give them revenue. So I think that's one of those decisions that her and the board are pushing for, that's going to have long-term impacts on both their bottom line and their accountability metrics.
And we're talking about, MPS is massive. And when you have declining enrollment, I know a lot of communities, Waukesha was one, KM, Kettle Moraine was another, that made the tough decision to close schools. I know MPS has kind of been on the opposite side, where they've chosen to not close schools and in fact fought to keep them out of the hands of other, choice schools or private charter schools. So what is that? How much is that costing the district?
I don't have an exact number, but if you look at the, so every year MPS has to put out an inventory of their school buildings. This is part of the vacant schools law that the legislature passed back in the mid 2010s, right? And we can kind of see what the capacity of those schools are, how many kids are in them, and how much deferred maintenance they have. So right now, MPS has 138 schools that are listed in that. Almost 25% of those schools are over half empty. So these are giant buildings that.
Oh, can you?
So yeah,
can you repeat that last part?
Yeah. So MPS has 138 schools in their building inventory, and about 25% of those schools are half empty from a capacity standpoint. So you're talking about, I think that's about 33 schools, right? So you have tons of schools that aren't filled with kids, right? It's that costs money to heat them. That costs money to do maintenance on them. It costs money because you have probably more administrators than you need. If you had a right-sized district with the right amount of schools, just on those schools, they have about $309 million in deferred maintenance. So if they were to keep these schools open, you can see the problem in the long term here. So as you point out, Waukesha just closed 3 schools. But even like urban districts that are not run by conservative reformers are making tough choices. Racine is restructuring. I think they're closing 9 schools. Kenosha's closing like 5 to 6 schools. Green Bay is doing the same. MPS hasn't taken the steps to make the tough decisions, and they've lost, I think, 30% of their enrollment over the last 2 decades here, right? So, and haven't closed hardly any schools. So they had a consultant report as part of this restructuring that recommended closing 5 schools. Our friends over at City Ford Collective said that number should be probably closer to 25 schools to kind of right-size the district as a minimum starting point. So it is a problem, and it's preventing resources from going into the classroom. You're spending it on administrators and empty buildings.
Yeah, and I know, like you said, the new MPS administrator, one of the kind of the bright spots in the early introduction was the admitting that there are too many bureaucrats, there are too many mid-level administrators, and they should go back to the classroom. How is that? Has that worked out so far? Has that been implemented, or is that just still kind of a talking point?
I think it's too early to tell. I think a lot of this stuff was done in the last budget cycle that was passed just recently. They still have a $46 million budget hole is what they're claiming here. So there's still cuts to be made. And I'm sure the package that the legislature just considered and couldn't pass here probably would have been helpful in getting, cutting across that bottom line. But going back to what we were saying, closing buildings and right-sizing the district, I think would do the same.
Right.
They've had a ton of, obviously, fiscal problems. They've lost numerous CFOs under the previous administration. I think they've tried to transition new people in to help get the district back on the right track, and it's been difficult. After the financial woes they had, I think the governor required them to do both a fiscal and performance audit. And one of the things that came out of that, I think that's very telling, at least previous administrations, is that there was a culture of fear to change. So in a district that needs a lot of changes, culture matters a lot, and making sure that all the bureaucrats that are kind of under the superintendent feel empowered to make suggestions, improve the district, and that just was not happening. And I think it goes back to that teachers union capture that I think is just so deeply ingrained in the board and the rank and file administrators within the district.
But they're losing a lot of teachers. MPS, I think, we were talking about this at some point. I thought you might have posted, or Will might have posted, that there's a lot of teachers leaving MPS. And can you talk about a little bit to know why, or what's going on there?
Yeah. So the Journal Sentinel, to their credit, did a great investigative job of investigative reporting. Yes, they did. They looked at the primary reasons, looking at the exit surveys from teachers. So when teachers leave the district, oftentimes they're asked to complete an exit survey. And the top reason that kind of rose to the top was students or teacher safety issues, right? So I think in the post-pandemic world here, we've seen this kind of devolving. This isn't a unique to MPS problem. You're seeing this in suburban schools, rural schools all over the country, is this just declining standards for school discipline and classroom behavior issues, right? So it's probably more acute in a district like Milwaukee, where some of the problems that you see can be more dangerous, like fights, and you'll see this on the news from time to time. Chairs getting tossed across the room, giant fights breaking out. Teachers don't want to be in that environment, and they don't want to be babysitters for kids. They're there to help them teach. And I think this is a broader cultural issue that, unfortunately, us as a culture have been just offloading more and more responsibilities of raising children to the government, and that is not a good thing. So this is partially on parents too, and parents need to stay engaged to make sure their kids are going to get through. But the teachers are leaving because the culture within the buildings is one that does not feel safe. And I have some other things I can kind of touch on there of what kind of led to that. Back in 2014, the Obama administration sent a Dear Colleague leader to a lot of urban districts around the country, including Milwaukee, launched an investigation into MPS about their school discipline policies and said they were essentially suspending too many black and brown kids, right? And so the district took steps to reduce suspensions and reduce discipline on a racial basis. And what we saw, and Will's done some research on this, the aftermath of that was kids felt less safe in the classrooms and student learning outcomes went down. So, the goal isn't to suspend kids left and right. The goal is to have discipline policies that have kids that keep kids in line and keep the learning environment as one that's sound. And this, I can kind of touch on this. Did I cut out?
Yeah, please. Just for a second,
okay.
But go ahead. Keep going.
And there was an issue this past session in the legislature that sought to tackle this issue. The Teacher Bill of Rights, it was by Representative Gobin and Senator Cabral Guevara, would have gone a long way towards restoring respect in the classroom. And I think one of the big things teachers run into with this discipline issue is they don't feel backed up by their administration, right? So you have a kid that acts out in class, you send them down to the office. Oftentimes that kid's back in the classroom 5 minutes later with a lollipop in hand, right? And not only does that undermine the teacher's authority with everyone else in that classroom, but it puts the kid right back in the same situation with no consequences. So the bill would have really allowed teachers to remove students that are being constant disruptions. For those students that are always being disruptive, it would require a behavior intervention plan. So much like we have IEPs for students with special needs, we would have plans for students that are constantly disrupting classrooms. This made it through both houses of the legislature, but it was ultimately vetoed by the governor. And I think that's an interesting position to have for a lifetime educator that wants to back up teachers. When you have something here that teachers will really help them in the classroom and you veto it, I think that's an unfortunate outcome.
Yeah, I think we've learned that, the year of the kid and the education governor is more of a branding thing by Tony than actual results legislatively. What's funny is when I was in the legislature, I chaired the veterans, I worked on the veterans committee with Ken Skronsky. We took a ride up to the Challenge Academy, which is this really neat kind of program that's for kids who aren't quite at the criminal level, but they have some solid behavioral issues and they recognize them and they're like going in front of a judge and the judge says, you either go to Challenge Academy or you go to, some sort of juvenile detention. Man, I wish that program would be more highlighted and maybe be able to take on some more students, especially in the MPS area. Because, if you're getting them out of there, and that's kind of a military style, full 24/7 thing.
Yeah, I think honestly, programs like that, and there's a lot of research out there that shows when you kind of remove kids from situations that are not ideal to grow up in, right, that you're going to see better outcomes. It's even with open enrollment programs when kids, from the inner city move out to suburban districts, there's typically better results for those kids. Now you can debate whether there's some selection bias there, right? You have parents that are actively pursuing a better outcome for their kid, but I think generally the research has shown, and the choice results in Wisconsin have shown that those sort of programs are really helpful.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about Governor Evers. So I did want to bring up the fact that unlike even some of his most liberal counterparts in other states, he is not taking advantage of the education freedom tax credit. Why not? I guess, like I said, when you even see the New York governor saying that this is something we need to take advantage of, like what is actually stopping Governor Evers from doing this and how is it hurting students?
Yeah, I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what this program is and how it can benefit kids, not just in private schools, not just in charter schools, but public schools. So just to give your listeners a little bit of background on the program. So what it would do, it's a federal tax credit. So if you as a donor wants to make a donation, you can get a tax credit of up to $1,700 per year. You'd have to make the donation to what's called a scholarship granting organization. These organizations then give out scholarships to qualified kids for tuition if you want to send your kid to private school, but also on a slew of other things, right? And I think in the MPS context, this is where it would be super beneficial. You can use it on things like tutoring, transportation, technology needs, right? It's kind of the sky's the limit on all the ways that school districts could use these funds. Field trip reimbursements, right? It's really beyond me that he didn't see this as an opportunity for public schools to benefit from this. Like you said, I think Jared Polis was the first Democratic governor to opt in. He called it a no-brainer. Arne Duncan, he's the former Obama Secretary of Education, said Democrat governors need to opt into this. This is a no-brainer. And I think it's basically Evers and Tim Walz right now that are on an island that have said that they have no plans to opt in. This is a program that's going to really be beneficial to kids across the country. And I think what we're going to find out is you're going to see Wisconsin taxpayers are going to make contributions to these SGOs, probably not in the amount we'd love to see because it's not benefiting kids here. They'll still claim that tax benefit, but all those dollars are going to flow outside of the state instead of to the state. And there are school districts out there that are interested in getting this SGO program through, this tax credit through, because they see the benefits. I think some of the Waukesha school districts are really considering how they can use this if we were to get opted in. I have no expectation that Evers is going to change his mind on this. But I think we're still waiting on what the federal rules are going to look like. I'm hopeful that if there's a more friendly governor come next year, that they'll opt in after the first of the year here. So all's not lost. There's opt-in periods every year. If we lose out this first year and everyone else is proving to us why we were wrong, we'll have the opportunity to opt in the future.
Well, hopefully we have the right governor come January that knows how easy this is. But the political threat to the choice program isn't just from, the governor's office or, who's running for governor this cycle. Can you talk a little bit about, what the Supreme Court could do and what that could mean for families?
Yeah, so there's a case on the school funding formula that's gone to the state Supreme Court. It's kind of remaining to be seen what the threat looks like. There have been previous challenges to the school choice program by Kirk Bangstad from the Minocqua Brewing Company. That was not a very well-posed challenge there. This one seems to be more organized. And I will say that I think what they're tackling is, and I think one of the claims that they make in the case is that school choice shouldn't get their piece of the pie until the funding for public schools is figured out, right? The argument I think we'll make and others will make is that's not a decision for the court to decide. That's a political judgment made by the legislature and the governor, right? This is a real threat. I think we should all be treating it as a real threat. And frankly, I think the other threat that's going to be coming for school choice is if, and hopefully not, if the legislature flips, we have a lot of, I'd say, folks in the legislature that have radical views on school choice, people that want to end the program immediately, right? And I think not only is that wrong from a moral standpoint, because these are parents that have made the decision to, do what's best for their kid, and it shouldn't be the government's job to tell them that the decision they're making is wrong. But it's a logistical challenge, right? There's 30,000 kids in the choice program in the Milwaukee boundaries. If you were to, wave your wand and shut down the choice program next week, where are those kids going? Are you sending them back to a failing district that can't even handle, filing paperwork on time? That doesn't make much sense to me. So there's threats from all angles. And I think a less talked about threat, and it comes from both the left and the right sometimes, is the overregulation of school choice. We have probably the most regulated choice program in the country. Some of that is understandable, making sure that schools are financially sound, doing audits every year, that makes sense. But a lot of these like curricular mandates that go into effect that are all well-intentioned. Oftentimes, it makes it less appealing for a school to enter the choice program, and you take away the autonomy of these schools to operate. The school choice program was never meant to be a public education 2.0. It's a different option, a different model, and you're giving parents the autonomy to decide what's right for their kid instead of just saying, we're going to mirror everything that we tell public schools to do with the choice program.
Sure. So besides, I guess, what we talked about with the Governor Evers, taking advantage of the education freedom tax credits, are there any other reforms that could be implemented to improve education outcomes in Milwaukee? Can you maybe talk a little bit about, what do you call it, the Mississippi Miracle or the Southern success? Or, tell me a little bit
Southern
about
Surge.
Southern Surge.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, Southern Surge. I think it goes back to kind of what I talked about. It's ensuring you have good curriculum in place. I think we took the first step with that with the literacy bill. We had worked on numeracy legislation, which some of these southern states have started to adopt as well. I think Alabama was the first one to adopt numeracy policy, and they were the only state in the post-pandemic world to actually see gains in their math scores as a result of passing that. And it's not as simple as I think everyone looks at the literacy bill and says, hooked on phonics, we do phonics, we're fine. There's more to it than that. You have to do the supports behind the scenes, train teachers to teach it properly. Numeracy is a little bit different. There's not like a silver bullet curriculum. It's a lot of different things that you'll have to pull the trigger on. So I think that's a good place to take a look and ensure we can get our math scores back up. If you look at the state as a whole, we're not going in the right direction. MPS is a big part of that problem, but it's bad all around. I think in post-pandemic reading and math, we were like 33rd out of 35 states. And we're basically in the bottom quartile for performance in the post-pandemic recovery stats. So these are all things that will benefit all around. I think there are some things that we should consider for governance change for MPS if the board doesn't take the actions needed to turn things around. There have been takeovers in other states. I think the state of Texas took over Houston's school district. New Orleans after Katrina they charterized everything, closed failing schools. And we've done reforms to try and move towards that. We did the recovery school district stuff and during the Walker era, and just never really worked out. But I think those are things to consider. I think a teacher bill of rights that ensures that classroom discipline policies are being adopted is an important piece of this. And then I think like high demand or tutoring is actually something that's really helped these southern states work. It requires some investment, but it is a strategy that has proven to work.
Can you talk about, say, the tutoring thing one more time? I think.
Oh yeah, yep, I got you. Yeah, so I think another strategy to consider is tutoring. So a lot of these Southern Surge states have invested some funds to getting tutors into classrooms, and this is something that would have dovetailed nicely with the federal scholarship tax credit because we could use private dollars to achieve some of this. But I think that high impact tutoring can help get kids caught back up, because as you probably know, if you're not reading by third grade, you're never gonna catch up. So we have to make sure that those third grade readers are there at a point where they can understand, because you read to learn after third grade, that you can understand the material moving forward. And that's such an important inflection point. And I think that's where tutoring comes in and can play a huge role in getting kids caught back up.
Shifting gears a little, Kyle, I just saw that Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty launched an America 250, What America Means to Me. Do you want to just plug that quickly?
Yeah, so we're doing a little scholarship opportunity for students to basically make a video, tell them what America means to you and what freedom means to you. So if you go to will-law.org, you can get information on this contest, drop a video there. We have cash prizes for kiddos. So it's an exciting thing to celebrate America's 250th.
That's awesome. Awesome. And then finally, Kyle, where can folks go to learn more about Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, where they can follow you and other folks at the organization?
Yeah, check us out on all of our social platforms. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you want to check me out, I'm mostly active on Twitter or X at The Real Kyle Koenen. And yeah, check out our website. It's will-law.org.
Kyle, on behalf of the Heartland Post, I want to thank you for coming on today, giving us a little explanation of what's going on at MPS and where things are failing and where things are going better. Really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it.